This Sportz Blitz podcast is brought to you by LMG. Grow your business through logo design, paper products, and video production. Visit leemarketing.net to learn more.
Welcome back into Sportz Blitz Live. Luke Robinson here with you now. I'm going to talk a little NBA playoffs with Ben Golliver from SI.com. Ben, how you doing tonight?
Doing real well. Can't complain. How are you guys doing?
Really appreciate your being on with us. We don't talk a lot of NBA here in this great state of Alabama, but we like to save it for playoff time. And my goodness, this past week has been absolutely unbelievable in terms of excitement for the NBA playoffs. I mean, you've got the Brooklyn Nets coming back after being down 3-1, and then they get eliminated on their home court to a Chicago team that looked like the walking wounded. And then Chicago carries that over to the next game against the Heat last night, and they win that game. That's got to be a phenomenal story.
You know, it was crazy. You look at the Chicago team, I mean, they basically had every disadvantage you could have. They didn't have as much rest. They didn't have as many healthy players. They don't have as much talent, and they didn't have home court advantage. I mean, when you're breaking down matchups, those are the four things you look at, and they were 0 for 4. And so to see them come out the way they did, I don't think anybody predicted that the combination of Jimmy Butler and Nate Robinson was going to outscore, out-rebound, and out-assist the combination of LeBron James and Dwayne Wade. That doesn't happen too often by any combination, let alone two guys who are basically making peanuts by NBA salaries in terms of, Nate Robinson being on a minimum salary and, Jimmy Butler being the number 30 pick in the first round of the draft a couple of years ago. So it really came from left field. I was totally shocked by that. That's one of the most shocking results I think we've seen in the playoffs so far. But they do it, by sticking to their formula. Play very, very hard, play excellent defense, stick to the fundamentals, trust each other on defense, and just go at it, possession after possession. And I thought, frankly, Miami cracked a little bit down the stretch. I thought Chicago looked a lot more poised. They just ran their offense, and Miami was just taking bad shots, really forced three from Dwayne Wade, an air ball from LeBron James, and that's not what you really expect from a team like Miami in those final fourth quarter moments. So, hats off to the Bulls for the way they played. And now we got ourselves a real series here. I mean, this could be a very, very interesting, intriguing series, especially coming off of what was, a 4-game sweep against Milwaukee. I mean, come on. It's time for a little bit of action with the Heat, I think.
Yeah, I think it's one of those cases where everybody talked about how wonderful it was for the Heat to have all this rest, and it really turns out that they got out of sorts. They were in such a great rhythm sweeping Milwaukee that way, and such a great rhythm that continued from the regular season when they had won 41 of 43 games or something ridiculous. So then they have a little time off. Meanwhile, the Bulls are one of the scrappiest teams in recent memory. And Nate Robinson, my goodness, I mean, it seems like he is playing on an absolutely different level. He's playing like a first or second team NBA All-Star to me.
Yeah, the big thing with him is, can he do it night to night? Can he maintain it? I mean, that's going to be the big question. And one thing we should not underrate Heat coach Eric Spoelstra. I mean, this guy really, really is a top-level NBA coach when it comes to strategy. He doesn't get a lot of credit because, of course, everybody's going to look at LeBron and say, hey, you've got the best player in the world, or they're going to look at Dwayne Wade and Chris Bosh and say, hey, you've got 3 All-Stars in your roster. You should be a good coach. But I think Spoelstra's a very good coach, and I think you're going to see all sorts of interesting adjustments. They really didn't pay Nate Robinson a lot of attention last night. I thought they really gave him too much room to operate, especially late. They just tried to say, hey, go ahead and try to beat us. And I think Nate Robinson's the one guy on that Bulls team. I kind of tend to agree with you. I mean, if you give him the opportunity to beat you, he might just be able to do it. So I think they're gonna be looking at this and saying, hey, we got to take him away. We got to force some of these other guys to be more, aggressive, assertive offensive options down the stretch. Because the Bulls, I mean, that is really where they struggle, right? I mean, their offense has never been above average this year without Derrick Rose. It's just sort of been average or slightly below average all season long. They're just not a juggernaut. And, Miami, they were really missing a lot of shots. So I think what they're going to expect in Game 2 is really to start hitting some more of those open jumpers, open things up a little bit on that end of the court, and then they're going to, really pay a lot of attention to Nate Robinson and say, hey, somebody else is going to have to do it. We're not going to let him beat us 2 times or 3 times or 4 times in this series.
And if you're just joining us, we're talking to Ben Golliver from SI.com, joining us on the Dane Sharp Attorney at Law hotline. Ben, you brought up LeBron James, and you talked about, of course, he had one of the best seasons in recent memory. Should have been a unanimous MVP. One guy votes for Carmelo Anthony. And is there any defense for that at all?
Oh, man, no, I wrote a column kind of taking that guy to task this morning. I mean, I think it was, it is indefensively bad decision. It just didn't make any sense. I mean, you can go right down the tail of the tape. You could say, hey, LeBron was better on offense. He was more efficient. You could say LeBron was better on defense. He finished second in Defensive Player of the Year, and he's clearly a better defender than Carmelo Anthony. He can defend way more positions, different types of players. You could say he's a better rebounder. You could say he's a better assist, playmaking player. You could say, he's better in terms of his overall leadership, in terms of being able to lead a team to true greatness night after night. He certainly did that. You could look at his durability. He certainly played more games than Carmelo Anthony did this year. I think one of the things when someone casts a vote for a guy like Carmelo Anthony, I think part of that is it's easy to wrap your head around a team going sort of from average or slightly above average to being very good. I mean, that's very easy to see that jump, right? Because, they're not a very good team. They didn't advance in the playoffs last year. This year, they get a very top seed, number 2 seed in the Eastern Conference. It's easy to wrap your head around that. It's not quite as easy to understand what Miami did. And I think over the last 2 seasons, they've made a huge leap. I mean, they went from being a very, very good team, one of the league's very best teams, to being a team that just basically didn't lose for more than a month straight, won 27 games consecutively, and really threatened a record that, has been standing since the 70s. So to me, it's more difficult to watch a team go from great to elite than it is to watch a team go from average to, very good. And I think that's what ended up happening. That was kind of the hole the guy fell in terms of voting for Carmelo Anthony, because if you look at their impact in terms of statistics, even the advanced statistics that kind of throw everything together in a formula, I mean, it's not even close. LeBron wins every single category. And so I think from that standpoint, people were right to be outraged that he didn't quite get it unanimously. But that being said, I mean, no one's ever gotten it unanimously before, and I actually kind of like the fact that nobody has, because I think that sets a really high bar for LeBron going forward, or whoever the next phenom is going into the future. It becomes this sort of a game. Who can play so outstanding, even better than LeBron did this season, that they do finally get every single person on their page? It'll be very interesting to watch that in future votes.
Well, we got a couple of minutes left here with Ben Golliver on the Dane Sharp Attorney at Law hotline. P.J. Carlesimo was let go by the Brooklyn Nets. I thought that was pretty unfair. Everybody in this area knows P.J. from his days when he was being choked by Latrell Sprewell. But you know what? He's a pretty good coach. And I think that the Nets were pretty unfair to him, considering he got that ship almost righted. Granted, they didn't win the first-round series. But you know what? I think they were on the upswing. What do you think?
I would agree with you. I think he is a pretty good coach, but here's the thing. Nets ownership, they're not going to settle for pretty good. I mean, this guy's kind of a lunatic. I mean, he's pretty crazy, and, he's been making declarations like the Nets got to win the NBA championship within 3 years, or, they've got to go ahead and they're one player away from winning a title right now. I mean, he has exceedingly high expectations, and so I think sometimes you see that in ownership where, guys can cycle through coaches or they can cycle through general managers very quickly when ownership's expectations are kind of out of whack with reality. I think if you look at the roster objectively, they were a team that either should have been out in the first round or a team that, kind of snuck into the second round. And, hey, they were right there. I mean, I think I agree with you. PJ had them basically playing to expectations, realistic expectations, by being in that Game 7. I think part of it, though, and why he was fired so quickly was just the effort they put out in that first half of the Game 7. I mean, they looked terrible. If you're in a closeout season-on-the-line game and you give up 61 points in the first half to a team that's playing without 3 key players, I mean, that's the kind of thing that makes ownership roll its eyes and say, hey, we got to go a different direction. So I think the one thing about the Brooklyn job that's interesting, too, is it's a much higher profile job than it was, last year or the year before, the last time they went through a real big coaching search. I mean, this is not New Jersey anymore. This is not a team that's sort of been stuck in the lottery for a few years. This is now, a guaranteed playoff team, a team that's in a very big market. It's got, very, very committed owner in terms of the money he's willing to spend. So I think they're going to be able to, get some pretty high-quality candidates in there. We'll see who they end up settling on. But I do think, a lot of it just has to do with impatience from ownership here.
Well, a lot of big names out there this offseason could be changing teams. You could fill us in with that, notably Chris Paul.
Chris Paul, yeah. I mean, ultimately, I think both Chris Paul and Dwight Howard are going to stay put. That's just me. I hate to be boring on those two guys, but that's just sort of where I'm at. The one thing that really kind of convinced me was when Chris Paul went out and he bought Avril Lavigne's house, multi-million Bel Air mansion. I mean, when you're making those kinds of purchases, you don't want to turn around and sell that house a year later and go and settle your family somewhere else. And he's a big family guy. I think, he seemed very comfortable over the last couple of years in Los Angeles. I think, he's in a situation where he knows he's got a very solid all-star he can grow with over the next 5 years in Blake Griffin. I mean, he's locked in already to an extension. So I think that's a situation where he's going to be very happy. So you go from there. I think they've got some questions. Obviously, coach is a question. They're going to take a look at Vinny Del Negro. I wouldn't be surprised at all if he's fired here very shortly in the next couple of days, and they just go a different direction and let Chris Paul have a big input on who that next coach would be. I think that'd be one step. And the other question in my eyes they really got to address is whether DeAndre Jordan's that guy. I mean, he did not look very good in the playoffs again this year. The free throws thing keeps him out of games because he can't shoot free throws. They need somebody in there to play alongside Blake Griffin because Blake can't do it by himself. He's not a guy you can play as a center when you play small ball. It just doesn't work. He's not big enough. He's not long enough. He's not good enough of a defender. So they need a big guy to put alongside Blake Griffin. Lamar Odom, clearly, I mean, that experiment did not work in terms of trying to use him with Blake Griffin for extended stretches. So I think that's the question mark to me is, one, take care of the coach. Two, take care of that center position if you can. And then, you go forward from there. But to me, I think Chris Paul is going to stay. He's got a very good life down there. And like I said, it seems like he's kind of planted some roots down there. So I'd be surprised.
Well, Ben, thanks so much for joining us tonight. We really do appreciate it. Here in football country, every now and again, we like to hear about the NBA.
Oh, no question about it. I'm sure you guys are laughing about Cliff Harris today, right?
Yeah, we just we hadn't talked a whole lot about it just yet, but we may get to it.
Okay, well, I'm here in Portland, Oregon, so that's a big story out here, man. I'll tell you, people can't believe how far that guy fell. So you guys can have some good laughs about that in SEC country.
Hey, listen, in the SEC, we have all of our own controversies. We don't need anybody from outside the region. Trust me, we got enough to laugh about.
Oh, okay, so 3 arrests in 8 days doesn't do it for you. I see how it is. Okay.
All right, buddy, you have a good day. And listen, come back and join us towards the NBA Finals, okay?
Hey, sounds good, man. Take care.
Thank you, Ben.